Before we embark on our journey through the elements and our discussions of the correspondences and the feelings of the elements, I'm going to talk to you briefly about the theory of Yin and Yang. Now, you probably recognise this symbol. It's called the Tai Chi symbol. It's a very familiar sight in many places all over China and all over the West now. And it depicts yin and yang. The yin side, the dark side, the yang side, the bright side. Yet the yin contains a little yang, the yang contains a little yin, and these two opposites are in constant flux, in a constant state of change and evolution and movement. And the five elements is also known as the five phases. And those five phases, or those five elements, are a further explanation, if you like, or a further development of the basic theory of yin-yang. So if you take the yin-yang and make it bigger and make it wider or make it more subtle and diverse, you can end up with five. However, each of those five still contains a yin and a yang, because yin and yang is everything that we experience in life, physical, emotional, and even psychological and spiritual, can be described in terms of opposites. The only way that we have a living experience is by knowing opposites. We couldn't have an experience of heat without cold. We couldn't have an experience of inside without outside. We couldn't have an experience of above without below, etc., etc., etc. And we can describe anything in life as having a yin and a yang aspect. Example that's often given of this is the example of a tree whose trunk is yang compared to its roots, which are yin. However, you can then see that although that's true, it's also true, if you want to refine it, to say that the branches are relatively yang compared to the trunk, which is yin, and then the twigs on the branches are yang compared to the branches, which are yin, and then the leaves on the twigs are yang compared to the twigs, which are yin, and so this goes on to infinity in either direction. You're still going to be talking about our experience of opposites, but before we go and enjoy ourselves with the five elements, which is a refinement of that or development of that into the seasons and all the rest of it, where did yin yang come from? And although I'm not going to take you on a long journey into Chinese philosophy, which I'm not a great expert on anyway, I do want to introduce you to my understanding of the basic concept of that, which is this. The Chinese spoke of the Tao, the great void, the great unknown, the great all. Our classic religion in this country talks of God. In the current era, people use the word consciousness, which is actually a word that I'm more comfortable with. It doesn't really matter. We can talk about the Tao, we can talk about God, we can talk about consciousness. We're always ultimately talking about the same thing, really. We're talking about something which we can't know, yet we feel. Something which we feel exists and we have a knowing of without actually having, if you like, a knowledge of it. So it's something which beyond words, beyond description, and can be quite well, it's described in modern Western terms as the Big Bang. But it can be described as nothingness. The Chinese, as I say, described it as a void or as emptiness, the origin of all that is. And once that takes on a material form, or a form that we can relate to in our perception of what reality is, it has to have opposites. And this is when yin yang come in. So yin yang are born of the spark of nothingness, the spark of consciousness, or what the Chinese called the universal spark, and what modern science calls the moment of the Big Bang, if you like. Everything is born from that nothingness, that nothing moment. From there comes yin yang. From yin yang comes 5 elements, and yin yang and the 5 elements don't exist as such. They exist as a theoretical model which we can use to understand the Tao, God, or consciousness, because everything that we are and everything that we experience is ultimately expression of consciousness. Our life is an experience of separation trying to reunite itself, because as soon as you jumped out of consciousness into yin yang, you had separation. We feel separate, but in fact we're not. We're in fact connected to the whole. And that's why this subject of holistic medicine always seeks to discuss all of the elements, or both yin and yang, as being part of a whole and connected to the whole. Nothing happens in isolation. Nothing happens without influencing everything else. Every element has a relationship with every other element. And that's what we're going to be exploring as we work our way through the 5 elements. So there's my introduction. The next video is going to be where we start actually delving in and talking about the development of the elements themselves.